In this episode of the Unsupervised Podcast, Tony and I sit down with Kennedale City Councilman Bryant Griffith and Realtor and industry expert Rebecca Ringer. Bryant is up for election in the city of Kennedale, and Rebecca is broker and owner at the Street Real Estate Company. They talk about property taxes and property valuations. Enjoy. How's everybody doing this morning? You great?
Doing great.
Yeah. It's a Monday morning. We can only do so much, but we're here recording this interview. Brian, what's tell us, like we talked about before we hit the record button, what all of this is about. Who's the intended? What are you trying to get the point across as?
Yeah, I just both personally in my own experience and also in my experience serving on city council, I've just noticed that there's a learning curve, if you will. You can't know what you don't know, and so when we're, one of the biggest concerns people have is their tax bill and how they can impact that. So there are things that the city council can do in adjusting the tax rate to try and bring about relief. But also on the same side of that, or opposite side of that same coin, there's fiscal stewardship. So we have to be able to generate enough tax revenue to be able to provide essential services and provide for the infrastructure and things of that nature. So what this is about is community partnership. So what we're trying to achieve is helping people understand trying to empower them, like what options they have available to them to influence their tax bill. And so by coming at this two ways, I've developed a 5-year property tax reduction plan that I'm hoping to bring to council and have us work through together with that on the one side, and then having the people on the other side apply for their exemptions, work through the petition process when their TAD valuations come in, that coming at it like that in a partnership with the community, that we'll see a greater deal of relief for our citizens.
I think a big part of that is understanding property tax assessment.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You and
yeah,
our lovely guest here.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yes. Rebecca's going to take lead on that for sure. So I'm doing a great deal of learning myself. I own multiple properties, but I have a great deal of knowledge, but not nearly as much as an industry expert that can actually speak to the petition process, how valuations work, and things of that nature. So.
Yeah, so the first thing is just even understanding property tax assessment and what it is. Property tax assessments are, despite what people think, they are not developed by the state. Those are developed by the county appraisal districts that come up with a market value for your home. And then based on that, they'll evaluate your property, determine what they feel it is worth, and then you get the lovely blue card with your market value number.
Yep, one of these.
Yep. And they're going to basically base your property on factors like size, location. There's so many factors that go into it, but they'll look at market trends and different things like that, and then you get your value. So that is basically what tax assessment is. Once you get that market value, then they take the numbers, the tax rates that were voted on or decided on by the county or by your district, actually, so your city. And then that rate is multiplied by your value, and there you get your tax bill. So that's kind of at least understanding.
But you're also not stuck with that, right? You can fight that. Anyone that doesn't know, they can protest that.
You are not stuck with that. It is critical. I will say it until I die. It is critical, in my opinion, that you protest your taxes every year. You have to continue to protest them, and you have options to be able to do that.
Well, that was like kind of one of the things I'd talked about before was, the community partnership aspect, right? Like one of the greatest parts of living in America is that there's a lot of opportunity that you have to affect change in your own life. And so in asking your leadership to work really hard to roll those tax rates back, at the same time, you can come at it from the other side and apply for your exemptions and petition those valuations, and together that'll create a better opportunity for relief across the board.
You can actually help yourself more. I mean, yes, the counties or the cities can, work on rollback plans, but you do have to understand still that those rates are used to pay for your fire, your police, your roads, your streets, your schools. So, in effect, you do still have to do that. And I feel a property owner can help themselves even more than relying on what your city is going to do because they need that budgetary money. So it's always a balance there, like versus what they need and being able to budget for the whole city. But if you can just continue to get those values down and fight them, and I mean, there's several ways and can get into all that about ways you can protest, but you're going to help yourself more there because the lower you can get that value, it's going to multiply by those rates. So it's going to save you more to ultimately take ownership, file for your exemptions, protest your taxes every year, and fight it that way.
Let's talk a little bit about the exemptions. Obviously, the petition portion will come once your valuations happen, but exemptions is something you can apply for right when you go to purchase a home, especially if it's your homestead. So let's talk about that part a little bit first.
So if you purchase a new home, you can file for your homestead exemption right away, which you should do. They do go into effect January 1st of the year, and you have to live in the home for a year for you to get the benefit of the maximum 10%. But so it's a 10% increase. It's capped there per year for a homestead exemption. But if you never file that homestead exemption, they can increase it at whatever rate because you don't have that protection. There's also other exemptions, over 65 exemption that can be filed. There's veteran exemptions. There's disability exemptions. So there are other exemptions, but it's critical that you go and you file. It's free. Despite what you may get in the mail when you purchase your home, it is free to go online and file for your homestead exemption. There's no fee for that. So there's a lot of companies that will mail you something that says, hey, pay this and we'll file it for you. You don't need to do that.
Yeah, a lot of people complain. Right? You see it all over Facebook. My property taxes are going up, this, that. Like, so I say about voting, if you don't vote, you can't complain. If you're not going to go do the simple, easy things that anybody can Google how to do or listen to this podcast and find out how to do, you can easily do that and save yourself a lot of money.
So what are two options? I mean, where would someone go, assuming they don't know much about the exemptions? Maybe they know they exist, but they're not really sure how to navigate that process. Where would they go to find that information?
You can go onto the if we're talking about Tarrant Appraisal District, which is where we are, you can go on their website, and there is information. I'd have to get you the exact link for filing there. There's tons of resource information on the Texas Comptroller's website that will tell you all you need to know about even fighting your taxes. But you can file online for your exemption through the Tarrant Appraisal District.
So I'm in Johnson County, and when we filed for our homestead, it was something for me as simple as I went on YouTube and looked it up, and they showed you the whole process, how to fill out every question. It was very simple, easy. I took care of it. It was actually through COVID, so it was like mail in. You didn't even have to go in anymore, so it was very simple.
Yeah, you can mail in online. I mean, they're not trying to make it hard on you.
No. Yeah.
It's just people having the knowledge to go and do it.
Yeah.
And, not just taking it for what they give you.
Yeah.
They're going to give you a value it's all based on a mass appraisal. You have to remember, Tarrant Appraisal District is appraising hundreds of thousands of houses.
That's right.
So if you think that they're sitting there looking at your house is apples to apples to a next, no two parcels, no two properties are alike. And when you learn how to start picking that apart and fighting those differences of what makes your property different from something else, you can start chipping away at that value.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the differences between market value and taxable value.
So market value, I like to tell people that market value is like your ceiling. That is the big number that the district is going to send out. And then your taxable value is the value, like what it currently is being taxed on. If you do not have any exemptions filed, your taxable value and your market value are going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
There's no exemptions to lower that. So I always tell people, get your exemptions because that's going to cap them at 10% a year at least to raise those. Your market value, you always want to protest that number. So let's say that number is their ceiling. And if you keep that number up and you don't protest it, they have automatic 10% every year to just bump automatic 10%. and they will keep raising it until they reach that ceiling number. So as long as you can keep, even if you can't get your market value below your taxable value, you've got to fight it. Because how much difference would it make if in 2025 they can only raise your taxes 5% instead of the full 10 because you were able to keep that market value number down? That's why I encourage everybody, protest it every year, no matter what. There's going to be some cases where you're not going to have room, so there may not be a need to protest.
Yeah.
But if you see a huge increase and you know that you have some evidence or some items to support getting that number down, get it down.
Basically just like write-offs. You're just writing it off so there's less taxable value.
Yeah. There are several ways that you can try to fight your market value. One of them is to, I know we're getting into a whole nother subject here, but, I'm sure we all have repair needs for our house.
Mm-hmm.
So get the repair bids to show, and you can use that as evidence to show, like, hey, do you think the appraisal district walks in and takes a look at your house? They do not.
Yeah.
They are pulling hundreds of houses in neighborhood codes and trying to establish what they think yours is worth. So if you get some construction bids or rehab bids, because market value, again, is what the home should sell for, buyer, willing seller at a reasonable amount. Well, nobody knows what the condition of your home is. So get bids. That's one way to fight it. And you can use those against the value to say, here's the work that my house needs. And you can submit those as evidence.
So fighting the protesting against that, it kind of makes the appraisal district do their job.
The onus is on the appraisal district. They have the burden of proof. So fortunately, our Texas law set that up where and most people don't know this, right? And that's part of trying to educate just the layman guy out there that doesn't necessarily know, but they have the burden of proof, not the homeowner. So by a preponderance of evidence, they have to show that this is the value. So if you can come in and start chipping away at the evidence, you may have location influences. Like I know at our house, we have power lines that run down the front. We have a gas well that's drilling a mile away. I have used all those items. We have a freeway that's 3 blocks away with road noise. I've used all that in the past as evidence to support their economic influences around my house. The district doesn't know if they're going by a neighborhood code. They may be pulling one property that fronts to a lake versus your property that doesn't. They try, but it's why it's important when you get their evidence in the mail. Like you'll get your blue card, and then you can go online and you can see all the documents that they're using. I would encourage you to take that and look up every property that they're saying is evidence against your property, and then try to see, okay, is this really comparable?
Yeah. So in my house, we have new construction all around, and I'm having drainage issues from that new construction. If I get a blue card saying my house went up this much in value, I can protest it based off like, hey, I'm having drainage issues too. I just need to get somebody to come out and give me a bid on what it would take to get that back to normal.
Yes, I'd call a foundation company, have them come out, and they will for free come out and do a bid, and they will give you an estimate on what that drainage will take, and then that is direct evidence. And they take those numbers right off the market value. If you're providing a bid that says my drainage is going to cost me $15,000, that should come off. They don't always. They should.
So it's called a protest.
They're pretty good. I will say. It's tough when you go in the original hearing a lot of times for property owners because I feel like they're intimidated. But if you can show good, concise evidence, which we can, so that's a whole other thing we can get into down the road.
Let's talk about that a little bit too, right? So the initiation of this process, because that sounds like a lot of work. So people who are listening to this might think, oh, God, I don't got time for all that. That's, this is impossible. But in reality, the process is fairly simple. On the front end, you receive your blue card in the mail,
right.
And you respond to it. That part's pretty seamless and easy, right? They'll respond and give you an initial response. Maybe they reduce it a little bit from your initial petition, but there's a whole follow-on process after that if you so choose, right? If you're not happy with their initial response, you can follow on, and that's when you end up with needing some of those bids, maybe in a hearing, those kind of things, right? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's typically 3 forms of protest. One, online, and that's the one that most people are familiar with. You can go online, You can type in, hey, this is my requested value. There is a spot. Actually, you can upload some evidence, but I'll caution you on that one. That is computer-generated number. They have probably a algorithm that gives like, okay, this number low, this number high. If you come in and you say something in between that, then they'll counter back right there. So that's the online protest. You get it right back. You submit what your value request is. They'll come back with a number. You can accept it or not. If it's not the number you want and you feel like this is way off, I would encourage you, don't accept that number. You can then go from there and you can file for what's called an ARB hearing. That is the one that most property owners probably don't think is the most fun, because you do get your evidence together and you go sit in front of a board of 3 members that are independent of the district and the district. So that is your ARB hearing. Now, I guess I skipped one in between that. You could do also an informal hearing where you just go up to TAD and you meet somebody. You don't have to have an appointment. You just go in, you meet somebody at the front desk, and you say, this is what I'm requesting, and that's an informal. So you have the online, you have the informal with no appointment. Just go up there and see what they'll give you. And then if you don't like those, you go to the ARB hearing. And then if you don't like that, Texas law also in 2005 gave us this nice out of being able to arbitrate, which a lot of property owners don't know that exists. It is a process that I personally use almost every year when I don't agree with the value that comes. And that process, you can go to the Texas Comptroller's Office website to find out more about that. But the Texas legislator gave us on property values up to $1 million instead of having to go to district court, which is what you used to have to do prior to 2005, which was way too expensive for any homeowner to even want to consider. You pay $500 and you can have an independent, and this is a truly independent third-party arbitrator, sit and hear a case between the district and the property owner. And you suggest your value, the district suggests theirs. If the value that the arbitrator awards comes back closer to your value, then you get your $450 of that $500 back. $50 automatically goes to the comptroller's office for an admin fee. If the district wins, or the value is closer to the district, then they retain the full district, or the comptroller's office keeps the full $500. But it doesn't mean that even if you lose the case, that your value might not have even gotten lowered more through the arbitration process.
You still walk away with something.
You still walk away. So that is like your final, step that I encourage people to do that one too. So.
Yeah, how often, I mean, I know you probably don't have the numbers right, off the top of your head, but how often does somebody go through that much trouble and then just still get told no?
I would say you're not going to get, in my opinion, okay, I don't have the statistical numbers. Yeah. I'm just a citizen too that fights mine every year. But I am involved in the process a little bit more, being in real estate and everything else. But I have not seen too many times that you didn't get a reduction at some level or every level of that process. Okay, so you're probably going to get a reduction at just the online. They're going to give you something 9 times out of 10. Mm-hmm. Then if you go to informal, you just say you don't accept that one and you just go up to the appraisal district, they are going to look and they may say yes, no. I have been to the arbitration, like the formal ARB hearing at TAD, and there have been times that I've won substantially, and there have been times that they were like, no, sorry, no dice, we're sticking with the appraisal value.
Now, was that the original appraisal value or what was negotiated up to that point?
Well, you're always, if you're declining the values, but you can go in then and use that as some more of your evidence to say, well, this value was agreed. But you're always fighting with the number that you submit to the Texas Comptroller's Office and to the appraisal district. Or let's just say you start with the appraisal district. That's always going to be your number because that's what you said, hey, this is what mine is worth. And then the district will have theirs. But in my experience, the district doesn't want to get into this entire drawn-out process and have to arbitrate potentially because they could lose money too. So they are pretty negotiable up to that point to try to work with citizens. They want to be right. right? But they have this huge mass appraisal approach that it's just never going to compare apples to apples.
Well, and a lot of times, there's the cost they have to be able to do that.
Yes.
I mean, they have the burden of proof. And so then they're going to have to do the research. They're going to have to spend the resources to try and get through that. So they'd obviously be inclined to negotiate throughout the process, because at the end of the day, it might not even be worth it to them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to spend more than that just trying to prove a point or nail it down the way they want it.
Yeah. And if you have fair evidence and your value is, can be substantiated, they are pretty good about working with that. And I would say for those that are scared of the process or don't want to deal with it, I'm not a property tax consultant. I don't do that for a living, but there are several companies that, and I use one myself, that you can use to go file that for you. Now, I did it for years by myself and finally just got to a point where I'm like, I'm going to let them handle this initial process. And they do, and they'll come back and say, hey, here's the reduction we were able to give you. Some of them only charge if they are able to get you tax savings. Mm-hmm. Some of them charge on what they're able to reduce the market value. So that, do your due diligence there, find a good one. And then, again, so I've used that process, and if I don't like the value that property tax consultant was able to negotiate, then I elect to use my right to arbitrate, and that's how I handle my personal home.
Yeah, and we're obviously not going to give out your information in the description for people to contact you, but if they have questions, I know you can, partnering with knowledgeable real estate agents can kind of help the process along, where they should know a lot of this if they're,
Yeah, and I don't, you can on the real estate side, you can give out our information, that's fine in that end. Again, I'm not a property tax consultant, but where people should lean on real estate agents is to partner with them to get sales comparables. Mm-hmm. Real estate agents have access to what has sold in the neighborhood, what is similar to your home, so they can go back and easily pull that information. And if you have a good relationship with your local realtor, or if you need one, then you can give out our information on that end, and we will help citizens pull sales comparables that they can use as evidence.
Yeah, so something I'll just kind of tie it all back in full circle, and again with that idea of community partnership, right? Like, it's not like these people at TAD are out to get you. It's not like they're combing through all the properties and seeing how high they can raise them intentionally. I mean, the intent behind what they do, again, is to generate tax revenue for governance purposes, mm-hmm. right? And it's the same thing for the city. So it's community partnership's important, and I just want to bring that full circle. These guys, when you're working through the process, I'd encourage people to not feel fearful or anxious about it. Certainly solicit the support from industry leaders that secure their services, but I would always just encourage you to navigate the process. The more times you do it, the more comfortable and confident you'll get in doing it. And it'll make the relief across the board greater. There are things city council can do with rollbacks and things, but there's only so much we can do. But together, through community partnership, there's so much more that can be accomplished. And so with that, on May 1st, we're planning on doing a lunch and learn in Kennedale with the Chamber of Commerce. Rebecca's offered to come and kind of give a presentation like this, but make herself available for kind of a Q&A. So that'll be May 1st, and we'll be promoting that here shortly.
Awesome. Well, we went through this checklist a lot quicker than I thought we would, so let's go ahead and get the opportunity. If y'all have anything y'all want to bring up, talk about that we haven't covered yet, this is your time. Looking good.
Well, I mean, I'm always going to say I would just encourage you to not be scared of the process.
Yeah.
You have to take ownership for yourself and help yourself. Right? In my business, I mean, I see a lot of just, unfortunately, like, I'm going to put my head in the sand and hope it all gets better, and I'm just not going to deal with it. But like Bryant said, as you go along and you do it more and more, it just gets a lot easier. Rely on your local governments to help, but remember that this money does have to support the services that you love. So
it's a double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword, and but I will say that you have to take ownership to help yourself, and it's not as scary as you think. So local agents will help you. I mean, it's never a problem. We are here to support our community as well, And again, like he said, if there are more questions, I'm happy to expand on it. I know we kind of just touched the surface.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to this, but we can go in more detail.
Yeah.
If anybody wants.
There are a lot of houses in Tarrant County specifically, and they just use the factors that they have. They're not going to go, like you said, drive out to every property and check out what issues it has. They're just going by the information they can get. So that's why just help them fill in the boxes.
Yep.
What information and
Yeah, and you have to remember that when the Tarrant Appraisal District go look at your evidence. I would encourage everybody go online and go to your forms and see what the district is pulling for evidence. And you'll see in their comparable reports with their comparables that they're using, they have like maybe 8 data points. Go ask an agent to pull up an MLS, and you'll probably have about 50 or 60 data points on your home.
Exactly. If you're trying to sell,
benefits.
yeah. If you're trying to sell your home, you would go take every necessary action to improve the value. Then,
Yes.
But
right.
it's just kind of the opposite.
And let me give you a little caution there, right? You're going to get that information from your local agent of all the data points of what the comparables are. But I would not give, the appraisal district more data points to come back and dispute you on.
Mm-hmm.
But what you want to do is use that information and compare against the data points that the district is using,
Mm-hmm.
which are only 8. So it's not as tough once you can start to say, well, this is different. You're valuing my lot the same amount as this lot, but this lot is, 0.25 and mine is 0.20.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a real estate agent, we know that somebody is going to prefer a 0.25 acre or a quarter acre lot or a bigger yard over a 0.20. But sometimes the district may value that on the mass appraisal approach exactly the same.
Yeah.
So you just want to start to point out these little differences, and then that's how you start chipping away at your value.
Got it. If everybody is pretty much finished, got their point across.
Yeah, one thing I'll add is just with that, I like that idea of chipping away, and that's kind of my approach to our tax rate reductions. It's micro adjustments over time make macro improvements, and so you can't be in a hurry to get what you want because the implications can have they can be negatively impact the city's ability to operate, provide services, things of that nature. So just again with that and the 5-year property tax reduction plan that I'm hoping to work with council on, we're looking at establishing a minimum standard to continue to decrease the tax rate, but do it with micro adjustments over time so that we can get to a target goal that allows us to still function, keep up with the growth metrics, provide for infrastructure and essential services. So the polls are open. Today is the first day of early voting through the 30th. So, get out there, make your voices heard.
That's the biggest thing you could encourage people to do is to get out and vote.
That's
let
right.
their voice be heard.
That's right.
Getting on social media
That's right.
and all these other outlets
That's right.
They don't make changes. Your vote makes a change.
Yeah.
The power is in the hands of the people, and that's case in point with your exemptions, your petitions, your power to vote and effect a change. So get out there and let's do it.
This was fun, guys. It's an honor to meet y'all and talk to you about all this important information.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.